Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled business meeting of the Lynn Haven City Commission on this day, August 22nd. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before I do anything else, I'd like to sincerely apologize to you for the allergy attack the mayor is having today. I'm sneezing and don't sound very good, but I sound worse than I feel, so I apologize for that. At this time, I would love to call on my good friend, Mr. Leon Miller, to lead us in prayer. If you would please stand. Thank you.
Our Father, our God, again we come to say thanks for this day that you have given us, O Heavenly Father. Thank you as you've led us through our ways so far this day, O Heavenly Father. O Heavenly Father, we ask you to look upon this commission today, O Heavenly Father, that the decisions that they make will be better for this community, O Heavenly Father. O Heavenly Father, we ask you to look upon our country. Bring us together, O Heavenly Father. O Heavenly Father, without your blessing, we cannot move forward. In thy name, for Christ's sake, ever. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 on tonight's agenda is the mayor's report. The first thing on the report, I would like to commend the city manager for quickly taking care of an issue on our Bailey Bridge. Many of the lights have not been working properly, and I've been getting some calls from those who enjoy walking at night or fishing at night. And so the bridge lights will be fixed by the end of this week. The purchase order is in place, and there's some wiring problems that are going to be taken care of. So that's good news for those of you who like to enjoy the coolness of the evening on our pedestrian bridge. This past week, I attended the League of Cities Conference in Orlando, and also the League of Mayors Conference, and also the meeting of the Federal Action Strike Team, to which I belong. It's a group that travels to Washington, D.C. twice each year to lobby for municipalities across the country, the issues that are most important to us. And I will say that the issue that was foremost at the League of Cities meeting this past week was home rule, meaning that we will be standing strong in the League of Mayors and Cities to advocate to our legislators in Tallahassee that we do not want the state of Florida telling us what we will do in our cities. We want home rule to prevail. So if you agree with that, please be contacting your local legislators and letting them know how strongly you feel about how important local rule and local decisions about how we live our lives locally are to our municipalities. So that's one of the things we concentrated on. I met with colleagues from around the state to exchange ideas. I learned a lot from experts and shared advice on how to strengthen our city's ability to prevent, neutralize, and respond to threats in the atmosphere in which we live. We certainly cannot take it for granted any day what can happen in our cities, and just want to commend our police department and first responders for always being there, and our thoughts and prayers are with you in this very uncertain time, and just want to tell you how much we appreciate what you do for us. I attended the Grants Expo to learn of grant opportunities from municipalities, and I've already been on the computer working on some of those since I've been home. And I visited the municipal marketplace, talked with a lot of vendors about new ideas in technology, in playgrounds and ADA accessible playgrounds, and also in solving some city problems using technology. And I also participated in adopting the League's legislative priority issues by voting for us as a city. Also, in the last 2 weeks, I participated in some of the final calls with the Air Force and the developers. And if you didn't see it on Facebook or in my Twitter account, yesterday I had the pleasure of putting the final signatures on the fuel depot property. And so Lynn Haven purchased it and sold it all in about 30 seconds. And it now belongs to Marina Island developers. And we will move forward with that. So, and Jerry Smithwick, who was in fact, he was the one who started the entire process in 1999, is with us tonight. And Jerry, if you just stand, I'd like to recognize you for all the efforts that you did, if you don't mind, over the years. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a long history, and we'll be celebrating that with a ceremony tomorrow at 4 o'clock here in the Chambers building. And we have many distinguished guests who will be coming, including the Deputy Secretary of the United States Air Force. So it's going to be a great day for Lynn Haven. I also met with Leisure Services Director Maria Stout-Tate and the new events coordinator Lauren Corbin and the city manager just to talk about city events this year and what we have planned. And our newest one coming up September 30th is our first ever cruise in on Florida Avenue. So mark September 30th. It's going to be a 1950s and 60s event with about 80 to 100 antique cars, a soda shop, a dance band with 50s and 60s music, lots of fun. So come out for that event. And that concludes my lengthy mayor's report. Thank you. I'll move now to Commissioner Dan Russell, if you have a report.
Yes, Mayor. I just got a couple of quick things. I had a citizen obviously message me about our flooding issues again on 8th in Georgia at the last rain we had. Unfortunately, I didn't get there in time to see it. The water had already receded. But I explained to her the process that we're going through with the stormwater survey and trying to figure out the problems. And she seemed to be placated with that. So hopefully we can keep this moving forward and get it addressed. I also had a citizen that lives in a country club that had some issues with yard debris being deposited on his property. And I've met with the city manager and he is addressing it. I also had several meetings this last week and a half or so with the city manager, and I have to say I'm getting more and more impressed with him every time I deal with him. So I appreciate you being here. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Tender.
Actually, I do not have a report this week.
Okay, thank you. But I read your report in the Lynn Haven Ledger, so you were ahead of the game there. Moving on to Commissioner Barnes.
Yes, Saturday, August the 12th, we had our shredding event that took place at Kane Griffin Park. We shredded about 3,500 pounds worth of documents and had quite a few people to come out. I'd publicly like to say thank you to Maria and her staff for helping with that and getting that event all set up. Next year, because it was extremely hot out there, we kind of like to do this in October. So, especially with the beginning of school starting at that same time, it was kind of some conflict things, but it was a great event, and I hope next year that if you did not participate and take part of that, then I will strongly urge you to do so because it is a great event. Thank you.
Thank you. So loud. Commissioner Friend.
Thank you, Mayor. I was out of town most of last week, but I did get the opportunity to go to the North Bay Haven open house, and we're so blessed in Lynn Haven to have such incredible schools as part of our community. I know that Bay Haven is just one of those that draws people to live here in Lynn Haven, and the facilities are great out there. And also want to give a mention to GAC, the contractor that we're actually contracting with some of our work for the paving. They did such a great job out there in meeting those timelines. It was really good to hear other people comment about a contractor that we also do work with. Also did get the opportunity to go out and talk to some residents and walk along the Bailey Bridge and talk to residents about the golf cart issue for tonight. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The city manager's report is item number 5.
I'm going to do it under new business. I don't have anything.
Okay, I'll come back.
Do it under new business.
Okay, we'll do it under new business. Moving on to item number 6, the city attorney's report.
All I'll say, Mayor, is thank you for all of the commission's support in the fuel depot, and that was a big project, and I think everyone here should be very proud of that, and looking forward to working on it and continue it, getting the rails and trails going. So
Yeah, that's right.
That was a big thing in the city. When I first became city attorney, that was one of the first things that came up, and that was probably 17 years ago. So it's been going on for a long time. That's all, Mayor.
And we'd like to thank you for all of your hard work and the hours that you spent working on it as well. Moving to item number 7 is the public hearing. And so at 6:09, this public hearing is opened. And this is in regard to the municipal limits of the city of land lying along Kirkwell Avenue. It's parcel 11571-063-000. It's a transmittal, and ordinance number 1043, the final reading. You ready, Mr. Manager? Okay.
Ordinance number 1043, an ordinance contracting from the municipal limits of the city of Lynn Haven, Florida, a certain parcel of land lying along Kirkwell Avenue, parcel 11571-063-000, as more particularly described herein, amending the boundaries of the city to exclude said land, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and reciting an effective date.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board regarding this item? There will be no action until we reach item number 12 in the agenda. Any questions from the public regarding this ordinance? There appears to be none, so this public hearing is closed at 6:10. Now moving on to the consent agenda. There are 3 items. I'll read through all 3 of them and ask for a motion of acceptance and a second. At that time, there'll be questions from the board, and if there are any questions or discussion on any of these items from the public, we'll go back to the one you'd like to ask about. So the consent agenda is item number 8, minutes from the August 8th regular meeting. Item number 9, the approval of school resource officer for Bay Haven Charter Academy 2017-2018 school year. And item number 10, approval of amended and restated lease agreement for 817 Ohio with Roman Nations MD of Nation's Best Family Healthcare, PLLC, for 3 years. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion or questions from the board?
Yes, Mayor, on the city commission meeting minutes.
Yes.
On page 2 at the bottom where it talked about the, where Commissioner Friend made his motion and second by Tender, the vote had me saying aye, and that was actually a nay.
Okay. So noted. I'm trying to find where you're at. I'm sorry, Commissioner Barnes.
Page 2 of the commission meeting minutes for
Right.
August the 8th.
Right. Is this on the, where the motion was passed 3-2?
Yes.
Okay. So if we could make a record of Commissioner Barnes' vote was a nay and not an aye on that, please, Ms. Deputy Clerk. And that will be changed. Thank you. Any other comments from the board on the consent agenda?
I've got a question about item 10, Mayor. If I can, the lease that we're looking at for Roman Nations, I honestly believe that it's a discounted rate, and I think we need to look at it. I talked to a commercial real estate agent today about average prices of commercial leases right now, and he's claiming that medical office buildings should be going for about $16 a square foot. My calculation on what we're charging Mr. Nations is, if you look at just the downstairs portion, it's $9.26 a square foot, but if you take the entire building into account, we're only charging him $6.52 a square foot, which comes out to about $10 a square foot less than what I think we should be charging him. In addition to that, I mean, if we're going to give him a discount rate, I don't think we need to be spending $20,000 remodeling the building for him to use it.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
It was my understanding that he was going to pay for those.
He's paying for a portion, but Joel and him had discussed to do $20,000 worth of renovation, which painting and a lot of things that we need to do when ambulance services move out from upstairs. All that needs painted, and there's quite a bit of upkeep on the building.
So are we paying for renovations?
Yes, our part is $20,000.
And if I may, Mayor, just for some numbers, my understanding on the lease agreement, we're charging him $39,495 or $492 and some change. At the $16 a square foot, that's $50,608. So you're looking at about a $11,500 difference. Now, I'm not saying that we need to charge him that full amount, but I don't think it's fair for other medical offices here to be paying what they're having to pay in rent, and we're discounting our rent to him. And that's, of course, my opinion.
Okay. Would there be any, would it be acceptable to the rest of the commission if I removed item number 10 from the consent agenda and added it as 18A under new business, and we could continue that discussion there and then go ahead and approve the consent agenda? Could I have a motion or a second?
Yeah. You need a motion for that? So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second that I can move item number 10 from the consent agenda and make it 18A underneath new business. And at this time, are there any questions? Excuse me, I have to get that. Is there, there's been a motion and a second. Could I get a vote, please?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so we'll move item number 10 from the consent agenda, make it part of new business 18A. And at this time, we've had a motion and a second for 8 and 9. Are there any other comments or questions about the rest of the consent agenda? Anyone from the public? Okay, then may I have a vote for approving the consent agenda?
So move.
We've already had a motion and a second.
Yeah. Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the consent agenda items number 8 and 9 are approved. Okay, moving on to old business, item number 11, the second reading of ordinance number 1042, amending section 2.02.01, 2.02.05, and 4.07.01 of the city's Unified Land Development Code, Appendix C, extending the scope of the corridor overlay standards. And action is required, so is there a motion for acceptance and a second? Well, we need to read it first, I'm sorry. That would be ordinance 1042, sorry about that.
That's fine. Ordinance number 1042, an ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending sections 2.02.01, 2.02.05, and 4.07.01 of the city's Unified Land Development Code, Appendix C of the city's Code of Ordinances, extending the scope of the corridor overlay standards, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediately effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion about this ordinance from the board? Any from the public? There appears to be none. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so it stands approved. Moving to item number 12, this is the second reading of ordinance number 1043, contracting from the municipal limits of the city a certain parcel of land lying along Kirkwell Avenue, parcel 11571-63-000. This is an actionable item. Mr. White, if you could read ordinance 1043.
Ordinance number 1043, an ordinance contracting from the municipal limits of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, a certain parcel of land lying along Kirkwell Avenue, parcel 11571-063-000, as more particularly described herein, amending the boundaries of the city to exclude said land, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and reciting an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. So there's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion from the board?
Yes, Mayor, if I may. This piece of property is completely surrounded by Lynn Haven property, if I'm not correct.
I'll direct your question to our city planner, Amanda Richard, and make sure that...
This is not an agenda item that I put on the agenda. This is an agenda item that the city attorney looked into. But I can say that in order for it to be able to be contracted out of the city, there are certain conditions that have to be met, just as there are to be able to come into the city. I don't believe that this parcel is surrounded by the city on all sides, and I know that there is no water and sewer available to this parcel, so it cannot develop within the city, which is why they want to contract out of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, would you like to add anything to her?
I mean, I don't believe it's completely surrounded by the city. I think to the south there's county land that's there. One of the conditions of contractions are rather unusual for a city to do, and one of the conditions is that you have to find that the conditions that brought it into the city don't exist anymore. And so if the land has been developed at all, it cannot be contracted. This is not developed. And when it came into the city, I believe this is one of the parcels that there was water and sewer that was available or promised, and it has not been provided in many years from my understanding. And so the owners have requested to contract. It's a legislative decision though, so if the commission is unsure or decides that from a policy perspective they don't want to do that, you can vote this down.
Mayor, if I may?
Sure.
When I researched it, there's, and I don't know if I think the word is an enclave, is that what it's called? There is a parcel of property that is completely surrounded by the city of Lynn Haven, and this parcel is in that section. So I don't understand why we would let something remove itself from the city when technically, in my opinion, the rest of it should be, brought into the city. I don't know what the issue is, how far we have to run sewer or water, but
if I could.
Sure.
That piece of property, because it's on the other side of where I live. It is not my piece of property, so please don't get any misconceptions. But that piece of property is actually surrounded by all county property there. There's no other parcel that's in the city limits of Lynn Haven.
If I may, Mayor, according to the city map, there is city property to the southeast. I mean, now there's a bigger piece that's not just this one, but according to the city map, we completely surround that whole section.
Yeah, if I may, sure. I think what Commissioner Russell is saying is that it's part of a larger enclave. This isn't just an enclave in itself, but this piece of property is completely surrounded by the city, and therefore it's part of an enclave, and so it would be increasing the existing enclave that's there.
That's my understanding, that that property around it is all outside, it's in the county, unincorporated Bay County.
From what I recall, the northeast corner is contiguous with the city, but the immediate properties around it are county.
Right.
From what I recall, the only way it's contiguous is on the northeast corner, and on diagonally, that's the way that it joins onto the city. However, I just would like to say that if you wanted to table this and bring it back, I would be happy to put a presentation together and bring it back under my department and do a call for it, etc. Now that the city attorney has looked into the legalities and says that it's okay for you all to do it. I'd be happy to do that if you would like.
Would the commissioner who made the motion to accept this ordinance and to move forward with it, if you would like to withdraw that motion and change it to tabling it, we could do that, or we can continue the discussion. Please let me know your pleasure.
I'm ready to vote on it, but if it's going to cause heartburn, I mean.
I didn't second it, so.
So would anybody else want to table it, or everybody's good to move forward? Okay, I'm hearing that we move forward then. Any further discussion? Okay, any discussion from the public? Okay, Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
No.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. So the motion is that we move forward with contracting. Item number 13, this is the discussion and possible action to approve the city manager, Mr. White's permanent contract. Well, as permanent as a city manager's contract is. I mean that with great humor. We confer with the attorney. Do I need to read his contract?
No, I mean, it was part of the agenda item, okay. So if
okay, is there a motion to approve?
I would like to discuss it.
We'll need a motion on the floor, and then we can
so move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. At this time, any questions or discussion? And Ms. Tender, go ahead, please.
Yes. I would just like to bring up that when we approved or chose Mr. White for this position, 3 of the commissioners here all voiced our opinion that this position should start at $100,000 a year. And we also talked about the fact that our last city commissioner left us making $127,000 after 3 years. And I just believe that what Mr. White is negotiating is far above that. And common sense tells me this. Whether you make $25,000 a year or you make $200,000 a year, when you take a huge cut in pay. None of us can afford to do that. I don't care if you're working for $10 an hour at McDonald's, you can't go out and get a job for $5 and survive. So that concerns me a great deal of what the future will hold, because I don't see any way, unless he goes and gets a part-time job or another, he's still looking, I don't know, but that's just my personal concern.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns from the commission concerning the contract? I was one of those commissioners, mayor, who actually voted against. I wanted a higher salary for this particular person, and I just wanted to explain why I'm in favor of that. Mr. White, my decision was not based on his former salary, but rather based on his qualifications and his experience and his resume. He is very close to possessing a PhD. He has a master's degree and is only one course away. He has over 20 years experience as a CEO of a large corporation, and we did advertise for the city manager with a salary range of $100,000 to $140,000. And in comparison with our other cities, also there are many administrative positions with the city of Lynn Haven which do pay in almost and some above the six-figure income. And I know that when Mr. Schubert left the position, he was not making this much, but he did not possess the degree that Mr. White does. He did not possess the years of experience, especially in the corporate world. So that's my thinking on this salary, that it is competitive. We don't want him to leave us and to be searching for another job. In my negotiating moments with Mr. White and the city attorney, his assurance was that with this particular contract that he is more than content to be part of Lynn Haven for a long time and is willing to work very hard for the city. So that's my justification for being for this particular salary. Would anyone else like to?
Yes, Mayor, if I may. Commissioner Tender, I can appreciate your position. I would say that I truly believe that Mr. Schubert should have went out at this level, to be honest with you. I mean, I would have had no problem compensating our previous city manager with this exact same pay structure. We got Mr. Schubert at a really good deal, for lack of better ways of saying it. He was eager to come to the area, to the community. He was looking to get married to someone that was well planted here. So we did really well to get him, and he did a great job. And every time I approached him for an increase, he was like, "No, I'm okay." So if I'd had the opportunity, he would have went out at this particular, around this same area. I would also like to mention that I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. White quite a bit. He's been very, very busy for less than a month. I think he's going to do a fantastic job for the city. I don't think that he and I are going to agree on every single thing, so it's going to be fun. We talked about some of that today. But at the end of the day, I think we have to bring in someone at this level to try to keep him. His experience speaks for itself. His education speaks for itself. I just think we have to step up at this point in time to try to keep quality talent. I think that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else from the board? Anyone from the public? Yes, sir. Mr. Beck? Either one.
Mr. Schultz, I live on Pennsylvania Avenue, and my understanding, it's kind of hard to hear in the background with the echoes. You're paying the new manager $125,000?
It's $135 in this.
$135?
That's correct.
What are the perks also?
It's posted on the agenda, is it not? Or that's
it was part of the agenda.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'll be happy to. I can hand you my copy over.
Can you just tell us, please?
Shall I read? Would you?
Yeah, sure.
I'll let the city attorney.
There's a quick summary of the contract. Basically, Mr. White would serve as a full-time city manager. His term is for 3 years. He can be voted out. He serves at will of the commission. There is a severance provision in there, depending on how many votes he gets to move him along. He can resign with 2 months with notice voluntarily, As far as the benefits, is $135,000 annual salary with a $5,000 increase after 6 months if the performance is satisfactory. There's annual performance reviews. He has a year and a half to relocate to Lynn Haven, and he gets $750 a month to offset the cost of automobile and $75 a month for the cell phone. And he gets the same benefit plans as all the other employees, except that he can opt out of the health plan and get a stipend for that amount in lieu of that.
That just seems a lot of money, even though the guy with a PhD, he's still a beginner. And I think personally, as a taxpayer, that's a lot of money. I mean, you could have hired him at Schubert's old salary if you guys voted him. But you didn't. You decided you want a workshop. Now it's costing us another $20,000.
Did you?
I think it's your turn.
Pardon me?
Your turn to talk.
I'm having trouble understanding.
He said your turn to talk.
Oh, if you're addressing me, or I don't mind responding at all. I was one of the ones who, in fact, I was the one who suggested that we pay at the outgoing salary of Mr. Schubert, and there was discussion. However, in my opinion, when you're hiring a person, you don't hire them comparing them to the person who was here before them or maybe the person after, but you hire them based on their qualifications, their resume, and on the salary which you advertised. And we advertised as a city in a salary range of $100,000 to $140,000. HR practices, generally, if you're hiring someone with the level of experience, he's acted as a CEO for a major corporation for over 20 years, with twice the amount of employees that we had, with a budget many times larger than what we have, with an educational level much higher than that of the city manager who was outgoing. I did not see an issue with offering him what the other city manager had gotten after an amount of time. This negotiation is what he asked for. It's still within the salary range. I personally think that Mr. White, based on what I've seen him do in the last 3 weeks, I've had more response from him than I've had in 2 years. I'm not slamming anyone. I'm just saying he's gotten on top of things. He's responded to residents. He's listening. He's going out and, I'm just very pleased with him. And we're the second largest city in Bay County. I said a lot about salaries coming in as mayor, and I still hold with that. I think we have many people within the city in administrative positions. Our city has been top-heavy, and it still is. We have people who are underpaid. When I interviewed with Mr. White, he's promised me that he's going to do something about fixing that curve and making things more equitable with our employees, and I believe him. We have the opportunity to relieve Mr. White of his duties if we become unsatisfied. So that's my comment. I don't know if the rest of the commission has one.
Okay, my time's up.
I appreciate your coming forward. And I didn't mean to take your time if you had another comment. I did. Mr. Schultz, did you say everything you wanted to say? I'm sorry. Are you good? Okay. Mr. Beck?
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Robert Beck, 1609 Main Avenue. I am a resident of Lynn Haven and proud to be so. I'm happy to hear, because that was one of my questions, that you are going to become a resident of Lynn Haven. That excites me a lot. I feel like if you're going to be part of our Lynn Haven, you should be part of our vested population. I am concerned, and I want to ask, and I'm not undermining anyone, but $135,000 starting salary, that's within our budget, and we're able to manage that, considering the fact that we lost someone that was budgeted under that. Board, is that within our budget?
Yes, it is.
Okay, fair enough. And then the other concern I have is $5,000 increase within, what was it, sir, Mr. Jackson?
6 months.
6 months?
That's based on commission approval.
Okay.
Yeah, up to
$5,000 increase within the first 6 months of satisfactory performance. I don't feel that that's fair to us as a city. Understanding Mr. White's already been working in his role of, responsibility for a month, but I feel we need a lot better window of time to have a fair judgment. My opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that opinion. Did anyone else have a comment or a question? Okay, thank you. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
No.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And the contract then stands approved. Congratulations, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 14, this is the discussion and possible action to approve the new traffic safety policy. And this, the city manager, if you'd like to report on that.
Yes, in your packets, you had a policy that took apart by a committee that you asked us to form. By no means today do I want you to take any action on this. I know it said in there possible action, but I really don't want any action taken. I want you to look at it because there is several things that I think you need to discuss to give me a little bit more direction, the way the committee needs to be thinking along with their engineering firm. One of them I have is speed humps. We only have 2 in the city, and I understand we still give speeding tickets in that area. So that may be something that you may or may not want to take out. Also, this policy is designed a lot with the MUTCD guidelines, which is nice, but a lot of their guidelines are pretty stringent, and it's going to be hard for a lot of these areas to be able to get a stop sign should they want a stop sign, or should they want a yield sign, or speed bumps or humps, either one. So I asked you to really look at it, really think. We have finished today. We finished all the roads that you had asked for us to monitor. I have not seen that report, but it was being compiled today, so I hope to get it this week. But, you know, I'd just like to get your ideas on this first take and, you know, give me a little bit more direction to meet with the committee.
Is there a discussion or?
Mayor, if I may, sorry, Commissioner Russell.
That's fine. Go ahead, Commissioner Frank.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you guys jumping on it and getting it to us. Obviously, we just got it, so I don't know. I've just put it up for discussion. I guess, is this something that we would have a workshop on, you know, so we can come back as commissioners and say, hey, here's what we may or may not like. I don't think we need a special workshop, but maybe a workshop before a next meeting or something. Just a thought.
Would you like to present that in the form of a motion?
Yes, ma'am. I'd make a motion that we have a workshop in the near future to go over the traffic safety policy that's presented tonight.
Is there a second?
I second that.
There's been a motion and a second that we have a traffic safety workshop before a regular commission meeting for the purpose of discussing the new traffic safety policy that's been compiled. Is there any discussion from the board? Any from the public?
Yes, if you don't mind, Mayor. And I think this is a good idea, and I'm going to explain to you or tell you one of the reasons why I think so. One of the roads that I said I think possibly needs a stop sign is Georgia. At Georgia and I think 15th. Well, I have since found out that there's going to be a concrete barrier keeping people from turning on that road once they've 6-lane it. So that's a prime example where there's not going to need to be a stop sign. So I think it's important that we work through this. So thank you.
I think so too. Okay. So Mr. White, if you would please call the roll.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so we will have a workshop before we move towards possible action on the traffic safety policy. And if you weren't here before, I just wanted to clarify, many residents have asked for stop signs in various parts of Lynn Haven, and our traffic calming policy is extremely bulky, and it's even in the draft form now, it's still very bulky. It's very, it's a lot of work to try to get through it, and so we're going to try to streamline that. So that's what we're talking about if you missed the last meeting. Moving on to item number 15. This is discussion and possible action concerning ADA access to the Bailey Bridge by allowing golf carts on the bridge. And before I ask for a motion or a second for discussion on this point, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. There was a recent article in the News Herald with a heading that said Lynn Haven mulls, M-U-L-L-S, as in thinks about golf carts on the Bailey Bridge. The headline was a misnomer because we were not discussing allowing golf carts on the bridge. We were discussing allowing ADA access to the bridge using any type of power-driven mobility device as allowed by the ADA, and golf carts are now considered other power-driven mobility devices. So I just had a couple of things that I wanted to read to you from the updated 2010 ADA policy, and then see where we want to go with this discussion. I've highlighted just a couple of, if you'll bear with me, of important ideas about wheelchairs and what are known as PDMDs or other power-driven mobility devices. Public entities must allow people with disabilities who use these devices into all areas where the public is allowed to go. The term other power-driven mobility devices is used in the ADA regulations to refer to any mobility device powered by batteries. Such devices include segways, golf cars, and other devices designed to operate in non-pedestrian areas. Public entities must allow individuals with disabilities who use these devices into all areas where the public is allowed to go, unless the entity can demonstrate that the particular type of device cannot be accommodated because of legitimate safety requirements. Such safety requirements must be based on actual risks, not on speculation or stereotypes about a particular class of devices or how individuals will operate them. And then it lists several reasons why an entity such as a city may decide not to go in this direction: the type, size, weight, dimensions, and speed, the volume of pedestrian traffic, and there are several cited DOJ cases on the amount of traffic, and most of those refer to national park or state park trails. And the only objections that are expressed in those cases are whether or not there's enough room for these devices to pass people walking, because many of the trails are as narrow as 36 or 48 inches wide in many state parks. Legitimate safety standards can be established to permit the safe operation of the device. If you're able to establish legitimate standards such as a speed limit, telling someone they can't drive the device faster than the pedestrians are walking, that type of thing, or that they have to stay in a particular lane of a path or an area, and so forth. And then finally, who is protected under the ADA? The ADA also applies to people who have a record of having a substantial impairment, a person with cancer that is in remission or regarded as having an impairment, a person with scars from being burned. And who has responsibilities under the ADA? It applies to all state, all local governments, and all departments. And then finally, the ADA prohibits public entities from isolating, separating, or denying people with disabilities the opportunity to participate in the programs that are offered to others. So I just wanted to comment that the ADA is very clear in several key points. I know there's been a lot of discussions. Everybody thinks that there's going to be a large number of suddenly golf carts on the Bailey Bridge. Lynn Haven is a golf cart friendly community. We have been for several months as far as community-wide. And we haven't really had that many golf carts on the roads. So I would imagine that those with disabilities would even be less. So that's all that I have to say on that. I'll open it to a motion and a second possible action or discussion from the board. And then once the board's, I'll go from there.
Mayor, can I?
We need a motion and a discussion.
I'll make the motion.
For discussion. And is there a second? So there's been a motion, and apparently there's not going to be a second, and so that means the board is expressing their desire not to discuss this, and so I guess we'll move on to the next item. I will leave time at the end for public commentary, so at that time, if you would like to make a comment about this, you may. I will move on to the next item, but I just leave the board with this thought that those of you who did not feel that you needed to make a motion on this, the ADA is a powerful entity, and you're leaving us open to some real citations or penalties. Moving on to new business. Item number 16, discussion and possible action to approve the scoreboard agreement between Buffalo Rock and the city. City Manager, did you have a report?
Yes, ma'am. Part of the budget workshop we went through earlier is about a lot of the trying to upgrade the facilities at the ballpark. I was in discussions with Buffalo Rock. They have offered to replace all the signs at the ballpark. So right now I think there's 7 fields out there. In the budget you have 8 fields, so they said they'd do that as well as put a new scoreboard in the gymnasium. All they ask, you know, the life of those boards is possibly around 8 to 10 years, that the concession stand at least, you know, have to go through them to sell Buffalo Rock products, where they, you know, can get a little benefit off supplying these signs. These signs are around $3,000 to $5,000 a piece. So, you know, you're going to sell a lot of Cokes to, Pepsis to recoup their money. But I think I'd like to recommend to the board that you consider this.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
Yes, I'd like to say something. I just want to ask, did we get any quotes from Coca-Cola or any competitors?
No, ma'am. Knowing Buffalo Rock through the years, there, if you look around most of all the ballparks, they're very heavily involved. So, you know, we initiated the contact with them.
Okay. Well, I would just like to say that as a consumer on a commercial level, that your product cost through Pepsi will go way up. It doubles what you can purchase the product for. So I think we're passing that cost on to our residents. That's all. I just wanted to say that. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Richard Gutnick, 1519 Pennsylvania Avenue. So, as Commissioner Tinder expressed here, we're not openly competing or giving any opportunity for another business entity to do this. This does not look well. You're a public entity, and you should at least give an open opportunity to other vendors if they so want to match this opportunity or beat it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Beck.
Robert Beck, 1609 Main Avenue. Again, I concur with the gentleman. I don't believe we should approach this investment with one sole bid. I think the other businesses, not necessarily just a beverage provider, deserve the opportunity to perhaps put their name up there and share the opportunity of advertisement in order to help our community. So I don't think we should stay with just one.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. White, would you like to comment? Yeah.
There is other opportunities to advertise at the park. We would take all the banners and other signs that anybody would like to donate money to the park. There's many other ways to also to help out the park.
Okay. Anyone else have a question or comment? Okay, Mr. White, if you'd call the roll, please.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
No.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
No. So 3-2, and the motion passes. Moving to item number 17. This is discussion and possible action to approve the city's brokerage services for group health, dental, and life insurance. Mr. Manager.
One of the things coming on to the city, I've been approached quite a bit by the employees about health care insurance and what can we do. I looked into it a little bit. I noticed only about 97 of the 150-something employees have health care insurance, and the number one thing that they mentioned to me was price and other considerations. Further I dug is looking into some of the services that was offered. Got with staff and we decided to do an RFQ. We sent out the packets. We had 7 responses. 6 were qualified. There was a committee of myself, the deputy clerk, and Commissioner Russell. I asked him to step on the committee as well to give it full consideration to look at this contract, and we selected Albatross as the preferred vendor.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance of the recommendation from staff?
So moved.
Okay, so there's a motion from Mr. Russell. Is there a second?
Second.
Are there questions or discussion from the board? Commissioner Russell, you look as though you're confused. Is something? Okay. Is there discussion or questions from the board?
Yes, I would like to, I asked earlier today, insurance is not one of my favorite things in the world to talk about, but in order for us to see if this is a wise move, do we have any kind of comparison charts about the plans that we offer our people now and the plans that the new company would offer?
No, ma'am. We asked them to look at plans, and this is mainly based on the service qualities we're not getting. We're looking at the other things that we could get.
So you're telling us for sure, it's a certainty that their prices will be lower?
For sure?
Yeah.
It depends on how we design the plans, and that would come back before the commission. This is purely just meeting with the vendor and seeing what we can discuss to find out.
So the final vote, it will come?
Later.
Later?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I know we talked about this quite a bit. I just want to make sure that, and I know our new purchasing agreement, and Mr. White and I can talk about that later. You know, when we did our new purchasing agreement, the local preference was only geared toward contractors. Previous city manager and I disagreed on that. I think it should be for all vendors. But I would like to ask the committee members that are on the board that, you know, did we give enough, or was there an opportunity to give local preference a chance? I really believe in local service, because when it comes to service, I think the closer they are, the better they are. And I can appreciate where we're at. I know we're doing an RFQ, and I understand that we're just going to start the negotiations with this firm, and if it doesn't work out, we can go to the second. But could you just elaborate on that just a little bit for us?
I can only speak for myself. I will say that I am aware with this company, Aventros, and let everybody know I have dealt with them at the cooperative level. However, you know, I went back and looked at scoring. If I took my score completely out, the average, it would not affect anything as far as the outcome. But I will tell you, you could, you know, look at my sheets, and I know on particular one of them, I did write local as that. So, I had it on my mind as a preference looking at the different companies. You would have to ask the other two committee members, you know, what they felt.
Thank you, Mr. White. Commissioner Russell?
No, yeah, okay. My reasoning was the level of service. I like the fact that they were going to provide a team of employees to service our customers, or our employees, I'm sorry, and their ability to do everything online. I mean, they were going to take the work away from the city, you know, the city employees having to do the work. They're going to do the paperwork for us. Of course, I've always told you I'm the guy that always wants to keep my money local. Anytime I can keep my money local. But in this case, I felt like their service was above who we currently are using, and as well as the other contenders. Very possibly their numbers are going to come back bad, and we can go to the next person. But I do think that we need to look at the level of service that we're going to get.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I appreciate y'all serving on the committee. I've done that as well, and it's not an easy thing to do, and I respect your decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the board regarding this?
I just, again, want to say I think the most important thing is the cost to our employees. And since we're doing that for that reason, because of those numbers, I think it's that's the crucial part, because if they can't afford it, there's no point in having it.
Thank you.
Well,
are there questions?
Mayor, if I could just piggyback on that, because I don't think I mentioned it before, but I've mentioned it more than once to Mr. White. The most important thing of the whole insurance thing to me is the cost is important, but having a product that our employees can participate in. That's really what I'm looking for in this. I just think I think a lot of people look at a municipality for benefits because of our salary situation. And if we can offer them a great product of health insurance, you know, that's really what I want to be focused on when they design the policy.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Russell?
Mayor, if I may, my goal is obviously if we can get the rates down to where we need them, I would like to see the city start covering 100% of insurance for employees.
Right.
That is my ultimate goal.
Exactly.
So, 100%?
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, any comments from the public or questions? Yes.
Gerald Stanford with Stanford Insurance. I'm the current agent, have been for about 18 years. And I just want to address one thing here, and I'm just going to pick on the scoring sheet here. I picked one at random because I don't have my glasses, I can't really see them. So we'll just pick, say, Mr. Russell.
Mr. Stanford, I have some readers if they would be helpful.
I can see it.
Good?
I can see them good enough. But there again, like I said, I have been here in the city for 45 years, or 18 years, and we have kept the rates down and excellent service to the employees and open enrollment. And my understanding is this company that everybody has rated so high is a web-based company. Is that right?
No.
What I read, they said everything's online. You do everything online.
We will be doing a lot online, but they will be here.
Okay, all right, then I misunderstood or something. But let's get back to what I was talking about here. First of all, the employees' insurance will cancel with the current policy year on September the 30th. If the city does not make a decision to renew the policy. Now we have everything ready to go to bind coverage. I've been working on this city since February, and we've been going back and forth on the rates. Started out with an 8% increase. And we set up a time to meet with Mr. White and Ms. Beverly over here, or Vicki, and Mr. White got overbooked, and so we spent about 3 minutes with him, and the rest of the time we talked with Vicki over here. But at this point, what we're looking at is a 3% increase from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that's firm. And I am willing to give up just about all of my commission, so we'll drop the commission down to 4.5%. You ain't gonna get it no cheaper than that, and you have a live agent to come out here to the city. Like I said before, I know 95% of your agents by first name. So they all know me, I know them, my office is 5 minutes away. But with Mr. Russell here, to give you an example on his rating, he rated, is it Abitron? How do you pronounce that?
How do I pronounce it?
He gave them a rating of 90%. He gave Accentria a rating of 55%. Barnes Insurance, which is out of Pensacola, 45%. The Clemens Company got 65%. Shaw Hawkins, never heard of them, got 45%. And I got 45%. Stanford Insurance Agency has been here for 18 years, rates 45% in the city of Lynn Haven on service, and they saying they gave me a local preference. So if they gave me a local preference of 10%, that means they rated me 35%.
There's no local.
My suggestion to the commission is to take Mr. Russell's numbers that he used here, that he had to just bring out of the air because he don't even know me, and take them out altogether. And if you do that, then that is going to make the averages more favorable. Right now, they've got that first company. I think everybody's got a
Mr. Stanford, I'm not interrupting. If you can bring it,
Ma'am?
I said if you can wind it down to a close.
Yeah, I'm closing right now.
No, I'm not cutting you off. Finish what you need to say.
Okay,
Just try to make it.
closing right now.
Thank you.
I would like to see the commission to take these numbers that don't add up and are totally ridiculous and take them out of the consideration and go with the other two numbers and do the averages based on those. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in the public have a comment? Yes, sir.
Mayor, while the gentleman's coming up, just a preference. I don't believe the current policy that they used for the scoring does not give local preference, because that's our new purchasing policy, does not include local preferences for anyone other than contractors. So just for the record.
And I'd have to, we'll come back to that comment. Okay. Mr. Clemens.
Hi, I'm Scott Clemens with the Clemens Company, 560 Harrison Avenue. I hear you talking a little bit about local preference, and I know that as a city you're apparently grappling with that as a lot of other cities do. We would love for you to grant some local preference, but that's not really what we want to focus on. What message I want to convey to you is local means a level of service that you're not likely to get from somebody who's 250 miles away. I think that's a very, very important distinction. A little bit ago there was a comment about online enrollment and the technology. We believe technology is very important in employee benefits, and that online enrollment can relieve work from your staff, make it a much more pleasing process for employees. But I would suggest to you that even the best technology, with that technology, there is no substitute for personal touch. And that, I believe, is what sets us apart and what we're able to do as a local agency. You offer benefits to your employees, but for them to truly value it, somebody needs to be in front of them. If they have a child with diabetes, or they themselves have a serious condition, they need to have someone that can speak their language, help them understand which plan choice to choose into that will take care of their own personal health care needs. And that's what we do. And if somebody a month from now after open enrollment needs help, we're just down the road. We're not 250 miles away. We're about 7 miles away. And we know our employees that we work with very well. And we care for them. We'd like to have the opportunity to do that for your employees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have a comment from the public regarding the insurance? Okay, Mr. Friend was making a comment, Commissioner Friend was making a comment about local preference and that he's believing that it only applies to contractors, but I mean, are you talking building contractors or
Yes,
is that what?
yes, ma'am. That's the way I understood it, because Mr. Schubert
I have a different interpretation,
yeah.
so I'm.
Okay.
Well, as far as this particular bid, was local preference provided in the bid? I mean, it would be in the RFP itself is what it would be.
Well, this is RFQ.
Well, it would be in the RFQ whether it would apply. It did not apply.
No, but there's, I gave local preference.
And so
my scoring.
Okay, so there's local preference that is a preferred method of giving scores that's in our purchasing policy, and then there's, I think, the local preference that Mr. White is talking about is just a personal, someone who's local who can come here and meet with the employees. And so in order for local preference to apply in any particular contract or RFP, it needs to be announced in that RFP or contract. Right. It's not an automatic thing. And so if the RFP or RFQ that went out didn't say that local preference from our purchasing policy was going to apply, then it wouldn't apply.
Okay. And so when you say, like Mr. White is saying that he, use local preference, so that would be like an implied local preference. In other words, it's just something that as you're doing the scoring, you're thinking in your head, this is a local person as opposed to not? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out for scoring purposes, there's not points specifically given for local preference like we do for local contractors. It is the scoring that they use, I'm not arguing with the scoring, there's opportunities in there that you could say, okay, this item I would score higher because the individual's down the road, but I'm just saying there's not actual points associated with the scoring directly related to local preference. And then the only other thing I would add is I know the negotiating and start the policy, and it will come back before the commission. I guess the only thing I would ask for is as much of an apples to apples comparison as we could get between the current company and the number 2 and the number 1 company, just so that we'll know exactly what we're looking at when we make that final decision.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay, there's been a motion and a second and regarding the discussion and possible action to approve the city's brokerage services for group health, dental, and life insurance, and with the understanding that this will come back before the commission, again, before a final decision is made. So, Mr. White, if you'd call the roll.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. Okay, so this has been approved at this point. It will come back before the City Commission for more discussion with a comparison line by line of services and product offered, and before a final decision is made. Keeping in mind that we have a very tight deadline, and so everybody needs to be doing research and staying up to this. Item number 18. Discussion and possible action to approve the transfer of 2 surplus Crown Victoria Police Cruisers to the Bay County School Board.
Let me handle that.
Yes, please.
We have 2 surplus Crown Victorias that has been in the, been setting since first of the year because we replaced them last year. These cars we've been typically getting between $500 to $1,000. They're hard miles, of course, being police cars. I've gotten with Bobby, our Public Works. Our fleet will take about 1 day for 2 guys to strip these because a lot of the equipment cannot be used on a newer vehicle. The cages have to come out, etc. It's my intent that I'd like to recommend to y'all, since the taxpayers have already paid for these vehicles once. The school board had mentioned that they may want to buy them. But I didn't know if the school board buys them, we do not have to strip them to the completeness that we have to if we sell them on the open market. So if it's to y'all's liking, I'd like to recommend to y'all that we donate those to the school board. They plan on taking those, repainting them, and let their reservists use them when they go help in the school system with their resource officers. Because, you know, it's going to cost us between about $700 to strip them to where we need to be. So we will not be gaining a lot of revenue.
Is there a motion for acceptance of this?
So moved.
Second.
Was that a second?
Yes. Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions from the board?
I do.
Go ahead.
From everybody that's contacted me, as far as residents of Lynn Haven, single one of them would prefer that the vehicles be sold. Now, I looked them up under Kelly book, and I listed them as fair condition, but I bet they're in better shape than fair. But I looked them up under fair condition, and with the mileage in the year of 2006, with 96,000 miles, in fair condition, the Kelly book says they can be sold for $2,500. And for the 2004, with 111,000 miles, it says in fair condition, it can be sold for $1,931. Now, do we want to mess with that? I don't know, but I just wanted everybody to be aware.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
To be able to do that, it's going to take a day or two because you've got to strip all the police stuff off of it. So you're going to have to pay somebody to sit there and do that. So you can figure, you know, probably, what, $200 or $300 coming off of that just in labor cost to remove the product. So, plus, I feel like you're going to get, you know, some goodwill out of the school board for doing it.
Being a good neighbor.
Commissioner Friend? Oh, okay.
Being a good neighbor, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I think this would be a good partnership that the city of Lynn Haven can engage in with the school board. I know the school board has added their own police force, and these vehicles have probably been ran pretty hard. And I just think it would be just a neighborly thing to do to just pass these vehicles on to them.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? Yes, Mr. Beck?
I'm very interested in this topic and unfortunately was not able to do my due diligence to it. Commissioner Tender, I understand your position and I respect it 100%. However, I do have to agree with Mr. Barnes on this one. I think it will be a good neighborly thing to do for our school system, plus to the fact, as Mr. White has said, for us to strip the equipment that's no longer allowed for us to sell for retail. The equipment's no longer serviceable to us for our models of our vehicles we have within our community. It'd be dead material. However, if we turn these cars over to the school systems and allow the SROs to use them, there would be individuals within those cars using those cars with that proper capacity and no waste. So I think that would be a good thing to do. Just my opinion, good idea. I know that our school systems are lacking in SRO. Our children's demands are higher. We need to have that positive image with the children in the schools for our SROs and our law enforcement personnel, because right now our law enforcements have a pretty ugly vision within our community and family members. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Hey, did you?
Yes, but not with regard to the vehicles.
Okay, come on up.
I'm Helen Jarosky of 3635 Azalea Court, a resident of Lynn Haven. I last came when the millage rate went up and had looked at the budget, which I believe had a $1 million line item for filters for the sewer system. Since then, I think Lynn Haven will be the recipient of, $700K or so for roads, their fair share, I think, from the county, as I understand it. But the trim notices have gone out, and the millage rate isn't projected to drop. So what I would like some consideration to your residents is to roll back some taxes that are applied to people's utility bills. That means power, cable, etc. And so perhaps one can do an analysis of that as to what amount can be rolled back in lieu of changing the millage rate lower. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I apologize, I misunderstood. I thought you were going to comment about the police cars, but that's okay because we heard what you said, so no problem at all. Did anyone else have a comment about the police cars? Okay, would you please call the roll, Mr. White?
Mr. Friend?
Yes.
Mr. Tender?
No.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. So the motion stands approved. At this point in time, we will go back to, if you'll remember at the beginning of the meeting, the consent agenda. We postponed the decision on item number 10, which was the approval of the amended and restated lease agreement. The right place, yes. For 817 Ohio Avenue with, no, that's not right. I'm reading the wrong thing, am I?
That's correct.
Yes, with Roman Nations MD of Nations Best Family Healthcare, PLLC, for 3 years. Okay. So now we're at item 18A, and I believe Mr. Russell started the discussion about the square footage, et cetera, so we'll continue that discussion with how we want to proceed on item number 10 of the consent agenda.
Okay. Yeah, my concern is obviously the rate that we're allowing Mr. Nation or Dr. Nation to have the 817 Ohio Avenue. My understanding is from the lease agreement that we're allowing him to lease the property at $39,400 and some change. If you take into consideration the full square footage of the property, that comes out to $9.26 a square foot. I reached out today to Darren Heyman with Nations Realty to ask him some questions about it because obviously I'm not familiar with commercial leases. Darren did a little research and got back with me and told me that a medical building or medical office, the typical rate for the first floor is $16 a square foot and second floor is $5 a square foot. So taking those numbers into consideration with the square footage of the building that we're leasing, the lease should be somewhere around $56,000 instead of $39,000. In addition to that, we've agreed to remodel the building to the cost of $20-something thousand. So if you take that into effect for the first year, he's only going to be paying $19,000 in rent, technically. So yeah, that's just my concern. I mean, I don't know if we're doing the justice for the city by letting him have this building at 39. I'm not saying we should go to 16, but I think that there should be an in-between number that we should discuss. And that's where I'm at, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there other discussion or questions?
Yes, Mayor, I would just ask, City Manager, I mean, we talked briefly about the negotiations of the new contract, but do you feel like there is any room? Did some of that come up? Is there any give and take? Is there, what do we, I mean, because you can't disagree with the numbers. I mean, it is what it is, the square footage per.
Well, I mean, if y'all want to look at renegotiating the price, we have not signed the contract, so it's still wide open. This contract was in the process when I took over, so it's been a continuation. You know, nothing says we can't go back and look at it. That's
is there anything, I guess, is there anything that we're missing that we would not have been privy to during the negotiations that we're not? I mean, obviously, we have a current tenant there. If he does vacate, we'd have to get a new tenant, so you have some of that to consider, but other than that, I mean, yeah, we're talking about.
If it's feasible to you, I will tell you, if he does vacate, it wouldn't be my intent to come to y'all to a recommendation to re-rent it back out. I'd want it for the city. And that would be an ideal spot for a drive-through.
Oh, you already got it.
If I may, Mayor, my question is how did we get into the landlord business to begin with? You know, I don't see how a municipality is in landlord business to begin with.
Before my time, Commissioner.
Yeah, that's a good.
I can probably provide a little context to that. That building was built by Bay Medical Center for before I was city attorney, before 2000, and was to hold the ambulance service there. The deal was that it was a ground lease, and so we leased the ground to them. They built the building themselves, and when they vacated the building, they gave it to the city. And so when they got out of the ambulance business, I think in the mid-2000s, they gave that building to the city. And so the city had a building with a medical building with no purpose for it. And so there were since then there's been a series of doctors' offices there and the ambulance service, but my understanding is the ambulance service is now vacated. Have they vacated that?
They're moving to the fire department.
About to, yeah. And so that's how we got into the landlord business on that building.
In my opinion, Mayor, I think we need to utilize it, sell it, or at least get the going rate for what a lease should be.
Would you like, I'm not sure if you made the original motion, but if someone would like to rescind that motion and make a motion that we do something different than what is here, that's your priority.
I don't know if we have since we moved it down, I don't know that we have a motion on the table. If we don't, then I would make a motion that we table.
Well, we had a motion and a second before we started discussing it. No, it was part of the consent agenda. You're correct, because we had a motion and a second for the consent agenda. So you can make a new motion without rescinding one.
Okay,
You're
thank you,
completely
Mayor.
correct. I apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd just make a motion that we table this item and have the city manager renegotiate and/or bring us back additional options for this property.
I would second that motion.
So there's been a motion and a second. Any additional discussion or questions?
The only other discussion I'd have is, I guess we're on a month-to-month with them right now through the current lease. Okay, just wanted to confirm that.
Okay. Anyone from the public, a question or comment? Okay, Mr. White.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yep.
Commissioner Barnes? Aye. Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. We move to the final, and so it stands approved. Moving to the, stands approved that we do something different. I'm sorry, not the way it was. Moving to item number 19, which is public commentary. This is an opportunity for anyone who'd like to speak on any of the items we've discussed tonight or any new items that we have not. Anyone who would like to speak, this is your opportunity. Mr. Beck.
2 points, if I may. Mayor Anderson, I want to say thank you first and foremost for taking your time as part of your job, but you also took time to make the trip down south to the big conferencings, and it's very apparent to me that you've done your due diligence homework related to the ADA and brought us back adequate information, in my opinion, my feedback on that. I may be out of place here, but Commissioner Russell, I want to call you on your standpoint, sir. When
And you have to address the entire commission.
I'm sorry?
You have to address the entire
When the campaign was run, there was a commissioner who stated very clearly that he was supporting golf cart usage and the constituents of golf carts as they so chose and needed. So I believe that vote needs to be reconsidered with the fact that there was no motion made and seconded for support to discuss the further actions related to the bridge and the ADA access. I think that needs to be revisited and rethought because there are persons who wanted to support it and they're not doing it now.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Am I allowed to respond?
Yes, you may respond, sure.
Sir, just for the record, I was one of the biggest proponents for golf carts being allowed in the city of Lynn Haven. Voted for it, pushed it, and everything. The whole reason I have an issue with this bridge is it's a safety concern I have. I completely feel sorry for anybody that's ADA compliant that wants to get on there. I have no problem with opening the gate to make it wide enough for a Segway. It's wide enough now for a wheelchair. It's wide enough now for an electric wheelchair. I am concerned with putting golf carts on there because I think somebody's going to get hurt. That's my exact and total reason why I'm against it. Of course, I'm only one of 5 commissioners, so that's where I stand.
Thank you. Yes.
Fred Strickland, 702 West 6th Street. I had some prepared remarks that I was going to make here tonight. I'm going to tear them up. I'm not going to do that. I'm losing my voice. I can't talk very well. With all due respect, and I mean this with all due respect, to a couple of commissioners who were quoted in the News Herald this past week. One of them says that I think it would be a safety hazard. What he thinks does not create a safety hazard on that bridge. Another commissioner said, I feel it would be a safety hazard. Again, with all due respect, what you feel does not create a safety hazard. No one has come up with a concrete safety hazard, not one. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Richard Gutneck, 1519 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's been a while since I've been before the commission, and the reason for that was the composition of the commission at that time was not as effective as it is now, so some compliments to our new commissioners and the overall commission. But the 2 items that I brought before the commission before was your ordinance protection of squirrels and the topic of occupational licenses and the way they're currently structured in the municipal code. But as I was preparing for this meeting and getting ready, I've looked over the municipal code that's online. I assume that's the current municipal code, and there's things on there that are incorrect that have been passed by this commission in reference to, for instance, you guys did away with the dog licenses, basically. They're still existing in the municipal code. And in regards to occupational licenses, as I've spoken before, you know, if my kid were to want to open up a lemonade stand, they would have to have an occupational license from this city. I have what I call a micro business. I'm trying to get a business off the ground. This year has been a particularly difficult year for me, and my liquid assets are going to be basically eliminated by just paying the occupational license fee that I have to pay. And I know that there's many others that are out there doing other businesses, you know, there's internet businesses and everything else going on that are not even complying with city ordinance. And my proposal before was to put a monetary limit on this. You know, the poverty level is somewhere around $10,000 a year if you look at the national standards. And to basically change the ordinance such that businesses that earn less than that amount or another amount based on the decision of the commission would be exempt from paying an occupational license fee. That would give these micro businesses an opportunity to grow. Now, I've been told by, I've been asked, why do we even have these occupational licenses? And I was told before by a member of this commission that it was for the privilege of doing business in the city of Lynn Haven. Well, I'm sorry, but I live in the United States of America, and it's a free country, and we are supposed to have our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So I would like to see the commission. I know before I was promised a workshop on this, and it never happened. So I would like to see a workshop that would look at the municipal code and clean it up, because I've been told that there was some motions done on the squirrel stuff and never showed up in the ordinance. And it could be that it's just been overlooked and it was taken care of before.
Thank you, sir. If you can, I'm not going to cut you off, but you can wind it up.
And I just have one other thing, and this is a totally different topic, but, and this will be my last comment.
Sure.
Stop signs as speed control devices, I'm opposed to that. That is not what their purpose is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our new city manager has mentioned the possibility of looking into a small business incubator, and maybe that would be a segue into having a workshop about occupational licenses and cleaning up some of those items that you were talking about. So I will make sure that conversation continues personally. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mayor, if I could just add to that, I agree. I think that, I don't know about a workshop, and I can't speak to the squirrels, but I haven't had an opportunity to mention the micro businesses to Mr. White, but I too think if it's not too much of a, if it's not too much work for us to administrate, I think you could do license based on gross sales or something to that, because I don't really know what the monetary impact is to the city for someone that's doing business out of their home. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Does anyone else have anything? Yes, ma'am.
Vicki Cook, 504 Virginia, and I want to go back to the bridge thing.
Okay.
I do walk the bridge. I walk it in the mornings, I walk it at night, I walk it almost every day. And more hazardous on the bridge than golf carts are bicycles, and I know it's a whole nother subject, but you have people walking this way and people walking this way, and the bicycles are going like this, and you have these people all dressed up like they're going to Tour de France or something, and they're speed through, going up on the highway, coming down that road, speeding back through. Well, that's fine. They're pretty good with their bikes, but then you have all these kids who are going and they're skidding and they're doing all this stuff. I know you can't monitor all of it, but those bicycles are no more or no less hazardous than those golf carts are going to be. There's babies out there, people fishing, they let their babies walk around. And I mean, I see the bikes just going like this, and it's kind of scary, actually. I mean, if you're going to put a lane up, maybe a lane for bikes, maybe a lane for golf carts, whatever, but the golf cart I don't think is going to be as hazardous even as the bicycles out there.
Well, I appreciate your comment, and the silence that I experienced, from the article in the News Herald, to me was much more meaningful than the few calls that I got opposed to them. The fact that, 40,000 people read the News Herald, and I received not one call, about that. Just the few that have come every time to voice, the same thing. So, if there's any other comments on any topic. Okay, thank you all for attending. Excuse me, one more.
Bob Garden, Marina Bay, building on the other side of the bridge. Regarding the ADA and the golf carts, has the commission denied us the use of the bridge? Is that, you've brought it up for discussion of whether you would allow us to, but have you denied us access to the bridge? I'm asking that, Mr. Attorney.
I'll let you, because of lack of a motion, can you take that as a denial from the commission?
Well, my understanding is that there's a physical barrier that prevents golf carts from going on there, and I think that was the request. So, I mean, there's been no action taken by the commission.
So if we get on the bridge, which I have pictures of a golf cart on the bridge, then there's no legal ramifications there, right?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking you, if we are on the bridge with a golf cart, are we breaking the law?
Are you referring to the pedestrian bridge, the Bailey Bridge, or the regular
Bailey Bridge?
The which one?
The Old Bailey Bridge.
The Old Bailey, the pedestrian, which is now a fishing pier.
Yes.
If you're on that with a golf cart, are you breaking the law? Is that what you're asking?
Well,
because of the gate being there.
Besides the physical inability, I mean, the golf carts are illegal in the city unless they've been allowed by the commission, and the commission has allowed golf carts on certain roads. And when that was considered, the bridge was not included in that, I think because it wasn't really a road, and then too, it wasn't added to the list. And so it's not, so it's not a permissible place to take a golf cart.
Okay, but it would be breaking the law, I'm asking you, if we're on the bridge. But actually, you can access the bridge on this side. You cannot access it from the other side.
Yeah, you know, that's, as far as whether you're breaking the law or not, I mean, you could be cited for something, I'm sure, for having a golf cart in some place that can't be allowed.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, that's a hypothetical question.
What would you be cited for? I mean, what would we be cited for if we were on the bridge?
That would be up to the particular instance and the police officer that would make a citation. I mean, that's...
All right, thanks so much.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. Full disclosure, this is the mayor's mother, so if you would state your name and address, please.
My name is Jerry Deal, and I live at 511 Tennessee Avenue.
Thank you.
And all that I want to do is ask a question.
Okay.
Like I did the last time. Why aren't you commissioners big enough as people to stand up and say, no, we don't want you on the bridge, and are you afraid that this government thing is going to cause you a problem? Why don't you just speak up and say what's in your heart and what you mean? That's my question. But of course, I'll get no answer. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may?
Sure, go ahead.
I have stated all along my issues with it. I have not hid behind anybody or anything else. I have told everybody why I have a problem with it.
And I'm proud of what you said. What you just said about that, you are a big enough man to stand up and say what's on your mind and what you mean. But nobody else has.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't mind making a comment. Thank you, Mayor. I just didn't second the motion because I can't support it, so we didn't have discussion for me to make discussion about it, but I'll use this opportunity if it pleases the board.
Actually, no one wanted to discuss it when it was on the agenda, so I don't really see.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to respond to the comment that was made to you, that's fine, but to enter into a discussion now when nobody would make a motion or a second, absolutely not.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes.
I didn't know if that was proper or not.
You didn't use the entire 3 minutes, so you have still some left.
You know, I beg to differ. I really do beg to differ. You say you've been open about your opposition to this thing. You haven't. I would think you've got a list of 50 safety hazards. Has anybody showed me a list of safety hazards? I haven't seen one. You're just saying, I vote against it because I think, or because of safety issues, because I think there would be safety hazards, or I feel there's safety hazards. Where is the list of safety hazards? The ADA encourages you to be proactive for the Americans with disabilities. You know, it seems you're proactive to find a reason not to allow us access to that bridge. I have a right to access that bridge just as well as anybody else. Unfortunately, I can't walk very far. I don't have an electric golf cart. I can't carry a fishing box, fishing tackle, ice chest, grandkids on an electric wheelchair if I could afford one. The ADA says I can use my golf cart, and you won't let me. It blows my mind.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a question I meant to ask a little bit earlier, and I'm looking ahead. I see all of our development and demolishments taking place on Highway 390, preparing for the widening. I'm all welcoming that because I'm tired of that roadway being a drag strip. I know it's going to be more so, but the turn lanes are out of control. My health and safety have been compromised several times between Main Avenue and Jinx Avenue, but my question and point is the crossover bridge at Mowat Middle School. What's going to become of that safety option for our children? I don't know if there's something already prepared.
There is, Mr. Begg. In the meeting that we had with FDOT back in June, there is a plan that will be moved to the other side, to the other street, to Mowat Avenue. That's the plan. That was what I heard the Secretary Philip Gaynor say in our meeting.
So the crossover bridge is going to be moved to Mowat Avenue?
They're going to build a new one. Yep.
Okay. Hopefully they'll paint it this time, and so it won't be so hideous and rusty, and a safety hazard to our children from getting scratched and infection. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, anything for the good of the cause? I appreciate all of you through this long meeting and for everybody's civility and everybody's willingness to discuss the issues. I hope everybody has a nice night. I apologize again for my voice. The meeting is now adjourned.